There's a question on everyone's mind right now. What is happening with Daniil Medvedev? 2026 Australian Open, the Russian lost to 20-year-old learner Tien, 6-4, 6-0, 6-3 in one of the most lopsided defeats of his career. He was bageled in the second set for the first time ever in a Grand Slam. He lost 11 straight games, and after the match he admitted he didn't know what to do out there. This is the same guy who beat Novak Djokovic in the 2021 US Open final to deny him the calendar Grand Slam. And yet here we are watching him struggle. Daniil Medvedev is a former world number one, a US Open champion, and yet he just suffered one of the most humiliating losses of his career. And the strangest part? His game hasn't really changed that much. So what's going on? To understand what's happening to Medvedev right now, we need to go back and see how he got here in the first place. Because I'm telling you, this guy came onto the tennis scene like almost nobody else before him. Daniil Medvedev turned pro in 2014, but nobody really paid attention to him for years. He wasn't a junior prodigy like Carlos Alcaraz. He didn't have the hype of a next-gen star. He was just this tall, awkward Russian kid with a weird serve motion who spent years grinding on the Challenger Tour. But in 2018, something clicked. Medvedev was 22 years old, and he started winning. He won his first ATP title in Sydney, then backed it up with 2 more titles that year. He jumped from outside the top 60 to finishing the year ranked 16th in the world. What made Medvedev so special wasn't just that he was winning, it was how he was winning. His game was unlike anything we'd seen before. He stood about 3 meters behind the baseline to return serves. He hit flat, aggressive ground strokes with almost no margin for error. His movement was incredible for someone who's 6'6". He didn't have the classic elegant game of a Federer or the raw power of a Del Potro. Instead, he played this mathematical, robotic style of tennis that frustrated opponents to no end. He was a wall, a human backboard who never missed. And his mental game. Well, that was interesting because Medvedev was a hothead early in his career. He got into arguments with umpires, with crowds, with opponents. At the 2019 US Open, he literally gave the crowd the middle finger and told them he was feeding off their negative energy to win. It was chaotic but captivating because you could see this raw competitive fire he was learning to control. 2019 was the year Medvedev announced himself to the world. He went on an insane run during the North American hardcourt season, making 6 consecutive finals. He won 3 of them, including back-to-back Masters 1,000 titles in Cincinnati and Shanghai. And then at the US Open, he pushed Rafael Nadal to 5 sets in one of the best finals of the decade. He lost, but he proved he belonged at that level. By the end of 2019, Medvedev was ranked 4th in the world, and everyone knew this wasn't a fluke. This was a legitimate top player who was going to be a problem for the Big Three for years to come. In 2020, despite the COVID disruptions, Medvedev kept his momentum going. He won the ATP Finals, beating Dominic Thiem in the final. He reached another Grand Slam final at the 2021 Australian Open, where he ran into Novak Djokovic and lost in straight sets, but nobody held that against him. But then came 2021 and the moment that would define Medvedev's career, the US Open. Novak Djokovic came into that tournament trying to achieve the calendar Grand Slam, something that hadn't been done in men's tennis since 1969. Djokovic had already won the Australian Open, French Open, and Wimbledon. He just needed the US Open to complete the set. Daniil Medvedev had other plans. Quick pause here to ask you to please subscribe. It really helps my new channel grow so I can keep making great tennis content for you. Alright, in that final, Medvedev played probably the best match of his life. He was absolutely flawless. His serve was dominant, and he won all 15 of his first serve points in the opening set. His return game neutralized Djokovic's serve completely. And most importantly, his mental game was perfect. No tantrums, no frustration, just cold, calculated, devastating tennis. He won in straight sets, 6-4, 6-4, 6-4. He denied Djokovic the calendar slam and won his first Grand Slam title. The tennis world expected this to be the beginning of a new era. Medvedev was 25 years old, ranked 2nd in the world, playing the best tennis of his life, and the big three were on the decline. This should have been his time to dominate, and for a while it looked like it would be. In February 2022, Medvedev became world number 1 for the first time. He reached the Australian Open final again, losing to Nadal in an epic 5-setter that he probably should have won after being up 2 sets. But still, he was right there competing for the biggest titles and looking like the guy who would take over men's tennis. Then something started to shift. At the 2022 US Open, where Medvedev was the defending champion, he lost in the 4th round to Nick Kyrgios in 4 sets. It was a shocking early exit for someone who had been so dominant at that tournament. But okay, one bad result doesn't mean much, right? Players have off tournaments all the time. But then it kept happening. Medvedev reached the 2023 Australian Open final and lost to Djokovic. He reached the 2023 US Open final and lost to Djokovic again. And here's where it gets interesting, because in both of those matches, Medvedev didn't play badly. He played well, really well in fact. But he couldn't close out the matches, he couldn't find that extra gear when it mattered most. The mental toughness that had been his greatest weapon started to crack. However, in May 2023, something unexpected happened. Medvedev went to Rome, a tournament where he had literally never won a match before that week. Clay was supposed to be his weakness, but he committed to learning the surface, and by the end of the week, he had his first clay court title and his 6th Masters 1000. He beat Holger Rune in the final and solved both Zverev and Tsitsipas along the way. It didn't make him a clay favorite, but it showed something important. When Medvedev commits to adapting to a surface or a matchup, he can still move the line. He can still evolve. In 2024, the pattern continued. Medvedev reached the Australian Open final and lost to Jannik in 5 sets after winning the first 2. He had the match in his hands and couldn't finish it. Then at Wimbledon, he lost to Carlos Alcaraz in the semifinals in 4 sets. 2 more brutal defeats, where he was right there and couldn't get it done. But 2025 was even worse. He didn't make it past the 2nd round at the Australian Open, and then went first round at the French Open, Wimbledon, and the US Open. 3 straight first-round exits at majors. The night people remember most is New York against Benjamin Bonzi. It was a 5-setter, and Medvedev had match point. Then a photographer stepped onto the court between serves at match point. The umpire ordered a first serve do-over, the atmosphere went completely sideways, and the match eventually slipped away. The image after the match, rackets broken, and Medvedev sitting on court for a long, quiet moment, said everything. He later admitted what the pictures implied. He didn't trust his body in certain conditions that year. Without that trust, everything feels harder. If your style is built on buying time, stretching points, and turning defense into advantage, then not believing in your legs changes everything. That's not an excuse. That's just the reality of a game style that asks your body to be honest for 3 hours at a time. So he made a change, a big one. After years of working with Gilles Servara, his longtime coach, Medvedev split with him and brought in Thomas Johansson and Rohan Goetzke. He called the decision a turning point. He talked about being more positive on court, less drawn into emotional battles that bleed energy, and more committed to solving what's actually in front of him instead of fighting with himself. Then came 2026. It started with promise. Medvedev won the Brisbane International, his 22nd ATP title. Here's a fun piece of trivia. All 22 of those titles have come in different cities, so he's 22 and 22. He's never won the same tournament twice. That tells you something about his game. He travels well, he adapts, and he came into the Australian Open on an 8-match winning streak, looking like he'd finally turned things around. He was playing with confidence again. He won his first 3 matches, including 2 5-setters, where he showed real fight coming back from deficits. In the 3rd round, he went down 2 sets to Fabien Marussan and found a way out. 7-5 in the 3rd set, 6-0 in the 4th, 6-3 in the 5th. That comeback was vintage Medvedev. He didn't flip the match with one big shot, he solved it. His return depth improved. His first serve arrived when it mattered. The rallies moved back into the long exchanges, where his shot tolerance is a weapon. Everything seemed to be clicking. And then he ran into learner Tien in the fourth round, or the same American who beat him in 5 sets at last year's Australian Open. The same guy Medvedev had developed a 1-3 head-to-head record against. And Tien absolutely dismantled him. 6-4, 6-0, 6-3 in just an hour and 42 minutes. Medvedev was bageled for the first time in 451 Grand Slam sets. He lost 11 consecutive games. After the match, he said, "I was just trying to win one more game. I didn't find many solutions on the court, which is rare, and I didn't feel that many times in my life like this." But it's not just the losses. It's how he's losing. Medvedev has had multiple matches where he's completely mentally checked out, screaming at his box, smashing rackets, having full meltdowns on court. At the Miami Open in 2024, he literally destroyed his racket cam in frustration. At the Australian Open that same year, he was yelling at his team between points, looking completely lost. And even in this year's tournament before the Tien loss, we saw flashes of that frustration bubbling up. This isn't the cold, calculated Medvedev who won the US Open. This is someone who looks like he's fighting demons out there. So what's actually going on? Why is a player with Medvedev's talent and track record struggling so much when it matters? The first thing to understand is that Medvedev's game style requires absolute precision and confidence. He doesn't overpower opponents like Alcaraz or Sinner can. He doesn't have a weapon that can bail him out of trouble. His entire game is built on consistency, court positioning, and mental strength. When any one of those elements is off, his whole game falls apart. His return position is the key to understanding everything. He stands 10 or 15 feet behind the baseline to return serves. It looks like a dare, but that distance buys him time. Time turns big serves into returns with real depth. And depth shrinks his opponent's options. Even when his first serve return lands in that middle zone just beyond the service line, he often wins those points because he's controlling where the rally takes place. What sounds counterintuitive becomes in his hands a way to suffocate a rally before it becomes dangerous. The flip side is that this style lives on fine margins. When his feet are a fraction late, the flat ball flies long. When the return lands too short, a confident opponent steps in and takes control. He doesn't have a built-in plan B. No serve and volley escape hatch. No forehand cannon he can spam for 3 games to reset the mood. He edits you out of points rather than blowing you off the court. If we look at his statistics from recent years compared to his peak, the differences are subtle but significant. His first serve percentage is actually about the same, sitting around 64%. His return stats are still elite. He's still one of the best returners in the world. But his breakpoint conversion rate has dropped. In big matches, when he has chances to break serve, he's not taking them at the same rate he used to. And in his loss to Tien, he even mentioned his serve was struggling, that the balls at Melbourne Park felt heavier, and his serve speeds were lower than they were in Brisbane. That's not a physical issue. That's a mental one. The second factor is the competition. When Medvedev won the US Open in 2021, he was beating a Djokovic who was exhausted from his calendar slam attempt. Now he's facing Jannik Sinner, who's 24 and playing the best tennis of his life. He's facing Carlos Alcaraz, who's 22 and has already won 4 Grand Slams. These guys are younger, hungrier, and they might just be more talented. That's a hard truth, but it might be reality. The third factor is that Medvedev has been carrying the weight of being the guy who's supposed to take over from the big 3. After he won the US Open, everyone expected him to dominate, to win multiple slams every year. But that pressure is enormous, and Medvedev doesn't seem to handle it well. He's at his best when he's the underdog, when he's the guy with nothing to lose. As the favorite, he tightens up. Every time he loses a big match, the narrative gets stronger that he can't win the big ones anymore. Look at his record in Grand Slam finals. He's 1-5. The one win came when he was the underdog against Djokovic. The 5 losses all came when he was expected to compete or win. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. The mental side of tennis is brutal. Sometimes a player just loses that belief that they can win the biggest matches, and once it's gone, it's incredibly hard to get back. But here's the thing about Medvedev. He just won Brisbane a few weeks ago. The talent is still there. But in his post-match interview after the Tien loss, he said, "I should try not to focus on this exact match, which was not good, because he outplayed me. But I should focus more on the general picture. He's trying to stay positive, but that's exactly the problem. The bigger picture isn't good enough anymore. What's missing is the ability to execute when it matters most. What Medvedev really needs is to stop trying to be the guy everyone expects him to be, and go back to being the guy he was in 2019 and 2021. The guy who fed off negative energy, the guy who didn't care what anyone thought, the guy who went out there with nothing to lose. The good news is he's only 29 years old. That's not old in tennis anymore. Djokovic won 3 Grand Slams in his mid-30s. Medvedev has time to figure this out. The question is whether he will. So what is going on with Daniil Medvedev? A crisis of confidence? A mental block that's keeping him from achieving what he's capable of? The question isn't whether he has the talent. We know he does. The question is whether he can get out of his own head and just play tennis again. Come on, Medi Bear, we're rooting for you. The tennis world needs the real Medvedev back. The cold, calculated, unbeatable machine who won the US Open and denied Djokovic history. That guy's still in there somewhere. He just needs to find his way back. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe for more epic tennis content. See you in the next one.